It is my privilege to initiate our first panel discussion on digital payments empowering Bharat. Our esteemed panelists for today are Mr. Sanjeev Kaushik, Additional Secretary, DFS, Mr. Deepak Sharma, President and Chief Digital Officer, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Mr. Rajeev Ahuja, Executive Director, RBL Bank, and Mr. Ajay Vyas, Executive Director, UCO Bank. The panel will be moderated by Ms. Praveena Rai, Chief Operating Officer, NPCI. Handing it over to Ms. Praveena Rai.
Thank you very much. And that was a great address by Simiji. Simiji, thank you so much for opening the session for us today. And welcome to my panelists here. I want to just first introduce the topic, which is really about digital payments empowering Bharat. Now, on this occasion of the fifth year of the Digital India creation, the creation of the concept, I think it'll be good to note why the concept was created. Digital India was really set up to ensure that as India is powering ahead on the digital technology and platforms that are becoming available, that we also ensure that we create the bridge for people who may have been traditionally excluded from taking advantage of these opportunities to be part of the success of the day. So that's one of the inherent objectives of Digital India. And what better way than to start our first panel focusing on how digital payments is really empowering this Bharat. Now, what is Bharat? Bharat is people in parts of rural India, small towns, the urban underprivileged, people who may not have easy and ready access to what we all take for granted, banking services, payment services, and whatever have you. So that's the definition of Bharat. It sort of gets used in the context of India versus Bharat, but without getting lost in terminology. I just wanted to lay the perspective of why and what we are going to be addressing in this panel. And when we cover digital payments, I think for NPCI, and NPCI has had the privilege, NPCI has had the pleasure of being part of the story of Digital India over the last few years. 5 years certainly has been very fast paced in terms of what has been done and delivered. And for every initiative that we take, it's very important that we also consider and take into account what is being done for Bharat. So if it is NACH, then there is, the DBT and ABPS platform. Aadhaar payments, there is AEPS. On RuPay, there is the PMJDY card. For UPI, there is the USSD service. So everything has a other side of the coin, which is always focused towards Bharat. However, there's a lot more to go, and that's what I'm hoping we'll discuss in today's discussion today. So I'm going to open this up for the first question. Sanjeev ji, if I can invite you to open the stage for us. If you could just tell us about how do you think digital payments has empowered Bharat? Has digital payments empowered Bharat? Have we done enough? What has been done so far? And as a second part to that, if you can also elaborate a bit about what has been the journey on the Aadhaar enabled payment system and how that could move further and forward to also enable payments for Bharat. So over to you, Sanjeev ji.
Thank you, Praveena. I hope I'm audible to everybody. Okay, congratulations first of all to NPCI. I was just thinking, what better tribute to the 1st of July when Digital India was actually launched 5 years ago? What better tribute than to be doing this online rather than to be cowed down by the lockdown and not being able to do this in person? I think it's really a testimony to how far we have come that increasingly all our meetings, various discussions are happening online through webinars, etc. So I think it's been an important and eventful journey. the whole digital India push has actually paved the way for a revolutionary change in the way people have handled money and payments. Let me just give you an anecdote to show how powerful the paradigm has been. You know, in when our honorable Prime Minister declared the Garib Kalyan Yojana in late March, early April because of the pandemic, and in the DFS, we were charged with ensuring that the 500 rupees installments per month for 3 months were made to the accounts of women in Bharat, you know, the rural far-flung areas of India where people were, in grave need for funds, but they were not able to reach and not able to access many services. So you will be happy to know that in these 3 months, we have actually transferred 31,000 crore rupees to more than 20 crore Jandhan accounts of women, mainly in rural, far-flung, remote areas. And this really is a testimony to how far we have come. In some senses, if you want to visualize it, digital India, of course, was important, but ensuring that there were a large segment of people who were no longer unbanked but had access to banking services with a basic account, the Prime Minister's Jandhan Yojana account, were able to get access to money. And today we are transferring huge sums of direct cash transfers, direct benefits transfers, like the one that I just talked about, through the digital push. Today we have 39 crore PMJDY accounts. There is a balance outstanding in these accounts of almost 1.35 lakh crore. And not only are people receiving the direct cash transfers in these accounts, but they're also using, if they can't necessarily because of the lockdown go and withdraw cash from ATMs or bank branches, through the BCs, the banking correspondents, they are getting the money, they are making payments, they are going to the point of sales machines which have been installed at various vendors. To give you an example, farmers are going to the fertilizer shops, outlets. People are going to street vendors. There are people who are accessing all kinds of payment services using the Aadhaar-enabled payment services. And this is a real powerful paradigm. In fact, when I was listening to the address by Simiji, it was really eye-opening how far the JAM Trinity, the Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, has taken the country. And we hope to grow much more from here because we have many, many miles to go.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And great points. I think the Jandan Yojana has certainly been the foundation block on the back of which a lot of these services we are now able to provide. Ultimately, payment is a service that is layered over the core banking account or the core banking service. And the collaboration with the business correspondents, the point that you make, has been a fantastic story in this journey. They've really taken to the purpose to heart and have been a big enabler. In the last 2 to 3 months, I think we've seen tremendous work happening in that space from the entire industry, all the banks, to handle the volume and ensure that the person who's needing to get the benefit is getting the service that they deserve. So I'll move on, from there, and not better time to talk about right now. We are all in the COVID, moving from lockdown to unlock. But the last 2 3 months has taught us a lot. Has taught us a lot, and there's been a lot of innovation that we have seen because of the new challenges that were encountered in the market. And I want to raise this to the rest of the panelists here. And Rajiv, I can probably start with you. In terms of across the products, we have the Jandan cards. There is AEPS. There is ENACH, which also has recently been permitted. Earlier, the e-sign for ENACH was not permitted, and the Supreme Court judgment got addressed. All of that coming together, did you see certain challenges, and did you see some interesting innovations that were addressed towards these challenges in the last 3 months? And do you see any of them progress further?
Yeah, Praveena, thank you. And first of all, I think it's a great occasion in more ways than one to bring this together. I think as the journey for usage of digital means or assisted digital means was already underway. I think COVID in some manner has changed the slope, the trajectory for that. and customers are a lot more open. We've seen ourselves almost between a 75 to 100% increase in throughput over the last 3 months across all our products. And some of that will probably not go back to the old levels. They'll probably continue from this point on. So account opening, fixed deposits, recurring deposits, use of BC network. In fact, we've probably had the most significant volumes in the month of April and May in terms of our BC network. As you know, we do about 10 crore transactions annually, and that's growing at a significant pace. And these are transactions done in a range of 2,000 to 3,000 rupees. So that's almost like 25, 30,000 crores across 8 lakh CSP points. And the activity level has been enormous. So I think in a lot of ways, the familiarity, the ease with which many of these products have acquired over the last 7 years, and then the impetus of this last 3 months has accelerated the journey. I think from a enablement perspective, we're obviously working on many things along with the industry and you all and the UIDAI. But for instance, the entire facial, authorization, account opening, and verification, these are enablements which can go a long way in reducing the friction costs, onboarding challenges, eventually a very robust KYC AML, so that the costs of doing business across the spectrum, including urban India and the rural India, are brought down considerably. And I think that journey has already accelerated, and we don't think there is anything else which will impede it. I think continuously the adoption is going to keep happening.
Thanks, Rajiv. And yes, I would agree. Great story on the facial auth pilot. Really appreciate the bank, jump starting that off and giving some early feedback on how that goes. So if people are able to really move beyond just the thumb for a biometric authentication, I think we'll have a good story going there in the coming time. So Deepak, I'll move to you from there. If you can touch upon the same question. So COVID times, unlock, and moving from lock to unlock. For Bharat, have you seen interesting examples of innovation? And if you can also take it further and look towards the next year or two, and say that what barriers do you think are there for further adoption of digital payments, and what ideas would you want to table in terms of how we need to be addressing them?
Sure, Praveena. So first, congrats. I think together as a Team India, 5 years, and seeing how the payment transactions have leapfrogged. Today, I don't think anyone has any doubt whatsoever about whether UPI is growing at the expense of AEPS or AEPS is cannibalizing Aadhaar Pay. I remember there used to be all this conversation that do we have too many options that have come up in a very short span of time in digital India, and I think our payment mission. Today, we see for each payment railroad, there is a customer segment that finds that payment experience relevant. And there is a market for each of those to coexist and grow. So as we look at, I think I will share a couple of very interesting data points. And as I was looking at data relevant to Kotak, and I'm sure this data may be relevant to the entire industry, I was looking at our split between the cash, which is the cash withdrawal at ATM and cash withdrawal at branches. And I was comparing this total amount in terms of value and volume to all the other digital transactions. This, I'm not talking of the P2P transaction or IMPS and NEFT. No, I'm not talking of fund transfer. But I'm talking of the whole merchant side transaction. So, which is either the transactions on payment gateway, people paying utility bills, or UPI, P2M. So all kind of merchant checkout. Sometime in October 2019, this ratio was around 60% towards cash and 40% was towards all other ways of merchant payment. Sometime in Jan, this is the first time this percentage got breached to 57%. And in April, while April is not the right reflection of the trend because a lot of economic activity dipped, the cash, which is branch plus ATM put together, was less than 20%. 80% of all transactions were digital transactions in the merchant checkout space. So while This can be an aberration because there probably was a less consumption of cash. But I think if you look at a trend line of moving from 60% cash, 20% cash in 6 months' time, I think the truth in my mind lies somewhere in between. And even with the full resumption of economic activities and transactions, I think the growth in digital transaction is here to stay. And this trend we will continue to see. When you speak about innovation, I think a lot more is happening where a lot of offline stores have moved online. A lot of payment and transactions which used to go through check and cash has started to move digitally. Simple example in urban India, a lot of society payments. People used to write checks. I think today nobody even talks about writing a check. Or probably in terms of the way we see the Aadhaar enabled payment and Aadhaar pay growth. I think the whole rural of Bharat has adopted AEPS railroad like anything. And I don't see there is any alternative to the convenience that AEPS provides, or at the PDS distribution point, we see the benefit of Aadhaar pay. So I think all these things are growing. Also, we are looking at the growth through various new innovation that we have been building in life, the banking and e-commerce coming together. So our category like a K-mall, which we started a few years back, today we see about 7 to 8% of the transaction that originates within our ecosystem goes to e-commerce category that is closely embedded within our own framework. And we will continue to see a lot more of such payment innovation. The whole education, the recharge category, the utility bill payment, I think has grown by 50% in last 3 months. So as I look at this data trends, it's not that people, once they've discovered how to pay bill online, are going to go back and queue up in the physical format. So I think a lot of this is habit forming. And in my mind, the bigger challenge or innovation that we are all looking at is bringing in a strong, robust security framework. Because as more customers get into the digital payment framework, digital transaction and ecosystem, how do we ensure that some of those customers who are early adopters, they don't get into any kind of fraud or compromise? And one of the areas, Praveena, I thought we should all think through maybe is how do we build a trusted merchant network for a UPI collect so that not anyone can ask for you to pay. And just like you have a verified account on a Twitter or a LinkedIn, there are verified merchants. And I think we have started some innovation around that. But I think a lot of this is an industry level participation. And I only hope that all of us work together to make this whole digital payment far more secure as we keep seeing the growth in volumes.
Lovely, very insightful points, Deepak. Thank you for that. As you rightly said, a range of products with something for everybody, and that's really the key of having a good product suite for different users to choose depending on their product needs. And you closed with some good suggestions there for us to take on board. Ajay ji, I'll move to you. If you can tell us about your experience in the COVID time, and as you see this moving forward, what interesting innovations have you seen, and what barriers? And I want to talk about this a little bit because we tend to talk of this Bharat financial inclusion segment. All of us call this the FI segment as one group, but in reality, it is not one group. As Sanjeev ji mentioned earlier, there are women entrepreneurs. There are rural folks who might be more, from the agricultural side professionally. There could be people in smaller towns who are underprivileged, and then there is the urban, community. We've seen the big focus on the migrant community in the recent times. So each one of these groups actually has fairly different needs, and unless we peel that onion and handle each one of those needs separately, we may miss the picture on how to really empower Bharat for ourselves. So I wanted to hear from you, Ajay ji, in terms of your what you have seen in this COVID time, and then what do you think are the barriers? What do we need to do as an industry, as a group, moving forward.
Thank you, Praveena, for giving this opportunity to talk on the such a good occasion. I congratulate all the stakeholders of Digital India. Last 5 years, I was in the field, uh, directly communicating with the customers at the field level, at the BC level, at the village level. And what I have seen from my eyes probably may be different from what you see from Mumbai. The real empowerment of citizens of India has taken place in last 5 years. We have made them very economically the part of the whole main ecosystem of our financial industry. We have given them opportunity for open an account. We have given opportunity for government benefits which can directly reach to them, and also given them the opportunity to avail credit at a very affordable cost. So the financial inclusion drive probably has the biggest advantage which has gone to any sector in the financial inclusion sector of the digitalization. If I talk to the data points, I can tell you 5 years before we were doing about 30 million transactions on digital platform. Now those transactions has gone to 200 million in 5 years. You can see the CAGR of the growth of the digital transaction which has happened because of lot of initiative from NPCI, from DFS, from Government of India on different platforms. During the COVID, we have the way NPCI has enabled the transaction platforms in 5 years because of the AEPS, Aadhaar Pay, UPI. That has given us a lot of armory to handle the COVID also situation. In the COVID period, what we are observing, people are preferring contactless banking right now. That is one of the major issues which is coming up now in the market. People are preferring, they don't want to touch the ATM, they don't want to come to the branches. So there are some innovations which has taken place during the COVID period, like contactless withdrawal of the cash from an ATM machine through QR. This is one of the innovation which has taken place during the COVID. Then virtual cards, the UCO Bank has brought virtual debit cards also for their customers because they don't want to give it the debit cards in even the POS machines also. So we have brought in the virtual payment card system. We have also introduced the soft POS also during the COVID period. So, in spite of all these things development, I think more and more innovations are required in now payment industry. We not to now people are very much in tune with the social media platforms. They are using WhatsApp, they are using other social media platforms. Can we converge our banking with the social media? Need to be looked into both the financial and non-financial part of the banking. Right now, during the COVID, we have initiated one project of migrating to WhatsApp banking, wherein we start working through the WhatsApp channel of banking. We'll be starting with the non-financial transactions, and slowly, once the regulator allows us to do, we'll also migrate to the financial transactions. So these are these few innovation. Probably COVID has taught us how to go about banking. The way Rajiv and Deepak has told about how account opening, visually we can open the accounts, KYC, other things, they are all already on the cards. But apart from that, let us have better user interface with the customer so that they can do a contactless banking. Thank you, Praveena.
Thank you, Ajay Vyas. I think some very good points there about how people, don't want to handle contact of any sort. Virtual cards being a great example. I think we were also hearing anecdotes about currency being sterilized and passed over counters and things like that. So obviously there is a big need for us to address, and this is there for the next few months for us to have that extra caution. And as an industry,
Praveena,
we will need to address.
Praveena, I'll just add one thing. I think within 2 to 3 days of launch of virtual card, the subscription was more than a lakh in the my system ecosystem. So people in fact we never estimated the need of the virtual card. So as soon as we launched the virtual card, immediately people started using the virtual cards.
Absolutely, I can well imagine and certainly understand that. So I think very good innovative ideas kicking off and finding a big pull, and that's one thing that we've certainly observed that sometimes for the Bharat requirements, one felt that it was a push. We were sort of driving people and moving people towards digital payments. But as Deepak earlier mentioned, now it's a pull. People want it, and that's what you're seeing also with the demand on the virtual card side. So moving on to another very interesting topic, Rajiv, over to you here. When we look at the collaboration to serve Bharat, there are, of course, the business correspondents have played a very, very big role there. What do you think about the collaboration with fintech? Fintech empowering Bharat, collaborating with banks, and I want to look at two parts. One is the fintechs for Bharat, and what about the fintechs of Bharat? Have you come across fintechs emanating from Bharat who also will be a part of the journey and find the opportunity to become large players in the coming years?
Yeah, Praveena, in fact, that's a great question, because I think all of the things we want to do, and certainly we are of a very firm view that as much as digital about ease and convenience, it's also about expanding the market, working with partners in many areas, and that's been kind of the core ethos of RBL Bank. And I think it also gives us the opportunity to understand consumer and business insights in parts of India where we may not have direct insight ourselves. And I think that's can be a great combination. We've certainly benefited a lot from that. So, for instance, we are the largest merchant acquirer because we work with fintechs, and a lot of them are tier two, tier three towns and cities. Our entire APS DMT network is now built on what you might call business correspondents, but they are fintechs at heart, because they are now getting more and more products and services powered by us into the hands of these CSPs, which can then bring it to their customers. The idea is the customer will go to the places where he or she is most comfortable with. So I think there is a larger opportunity looming in my view. Supply chain, we are doing some experiments on small retailer financing using payment data, both in urban and non and rural markets. And that's, I think, the next step is to see how we can leverage transaction data along with our partners to create more meaningful products and services for the merchant and for the consumers. So I see traffic both ways. I see supply chain. In fact, one of the things of COVID will be that many large anchors who have traditionally been fairly modern in terms of linking the supply chain are wanting to do more electronification right down to the kirana store or the small merchant, because that'll give them a lot of data as well as improve the delivery of services and products in time. How does a fintech and a bank play a role in not just connecting the payment flows, but also providing the uh, working capital layer, where we know there's an anchor, we know there is a past pattern of sales, we know that these are fast moving goods, and how do you create that and build more effective financing products?
So Deepak, over to you with the same question in terms of fintech being an enabler, the collaboration between the banks and fintech, specific to solutions that we need to offer for Bharat. Your views on that.
So I said each bank has taken a different approach to the fintech collaboration. When I speak as Kotak strategy, I think we have been more selective in terms of the way we approach the whole fintech ecosystem. While we have our open banking platform through which we have about 50 odd APIs that we have provided to those who want to connect with us, be it developers, be it fintech, be it large enterprises. But we look at it in two or three things. We look at what are our core strengths. And obviously our core strengths lies in the nodal account, settlement, collection, ensuring that these fintechs have a robust way to pay in and pay out and manage their whole cash management and liquidity with us. Second is when we look at young fintechs or the ones who are just starting or probably at a very, very early age. There we have looked at what are the key problems are they solving. And I think if they are solving problem which is at scale, for example, there are fintechs we are working with who are looking at an integrated merchant acquiring strategy. Because when you go to a merchant, today you have AEPS, an Aadhaar Pay, and a POS, and a QR solution. But the merchant doesn't want to look at each of those as a standalone acceptance solution. And there are fintechs who are solving for this problem. So we work with such fintechs very closely. We also look at fintechs who are providing the last mile merchant acquiring access or reach, especially in Northeast, in tier 3, tier 4 markets. Because these are some of the problems we must admit, despite our best intent, I think banks have not been able to solve of their own. And I think picking up and working very closely with partners who have a business model and who have a way to serve or acquire customers in these markets makes sense. So broadly, innovation, market access, and managing their cash flow settlement nodal. I think these are largely the areas that we focus with. And around this, we have over 200 fintech partnerships that we have stitched over last 2 years. And I think most of these partnerships we have seen as a long-term sustainable partnerships.
Thank you, Deepak and Rajiv. I think great points on the supply chain opportunity there, and I think we are in fact hearing more about with a lot of the migrant laborers having moved back to certain states. Potentially, there is an opportunity to maybe create even more local employment there. So supply chain and many of these factors might also start looking different in the coming years as organizations look to de-risk some of the urban concentration that we have in the current environment. Remote parts of the country, aggregated payment services, some great points there. So Ajay, I'll come to you on this point on fintech, and I specifically want to understand from you about your experience on enabled services. I think there is a body of work around doorstep banking, for example, doorstep services. What do you think about how this is important? Assisted services being important for digital empowerment of Bharat.
See, Praveena, under the roadmap of banking reforms by Government of India, through their EASE agenda, there's the enhanced access and service excellence reforms. UCO Bank has given the role for creating a platform for doorstep banking. We have used fintechs for these purposes. Now we have about 10 million, about 100 million citizens which are above age of 60 and which are we are not able to come to the banking brick and mortar branches, and they need digital at their doorstep. So what we have done, we have brought in two fintech companies in India, and through universal touch points, these customers can contact these fintech companies, and the banking services can be delivered at their doorsteps. We have divided these services into two parts: one is financial services, and then another non-financial services. In non-financial services, we have pickup of checks and drafts, new checkbook requisition, acceptance of 15G, 15H, acceptance of IT challans, standing instructions, uh, delivery of statement of accounts, delivery of non-personalized checkbooks, delivery of prepaid instruments, Form 16 to be delivered, term fixed deposit receipts. These can be delivered. These are the non-financial transactions. We have started these services in 4 cities now, and on by 15th August, we are also starting the financial services also. This is purely based on like the way the Zomato works or the Gojek work or the Ola works. The same way the BC point, these guys will be in the market. They will be GPS, they have a GPS locator with them. Based on the transactions and all seamlessly, all banks will be uh, work with close coordination with the fintech companies. And as soon as the request comes from the customer, it will be diverted towards the pickup points. They'll go to the branches. Branches will have the already have the messages for this, and the services will be delivered. We are trying to give the services within 3 hours, and if the customer has requested before 3 p.m. If he is requesting after 3 p.m., probably next day by 12 o'clock, the services will be delivered at his doorstep. So probably this is the major services, and I'm very sure that most of the public sector banks will join this platform. We have already have the IT collaboration with these banks, and probably by 15th of August, we will roll out the financial transaction through doorstep banking. Thank you, Praveena.
Thank you. So I think doorstep banking, and I'm sure this can be as relevant across the country for all parts of the population, onboarding people onto various platforms, maybe cash out services, payment services, so on and so forth. So really look forward to tracking that very
The,
closely. Sanjeev,
Pravina,
Sanjeev,
these
yes.
guys will carry these guys will carry the micro ATMs, and probably they'll deliver the cash also. They'll accept the cash also, deposits also. And very nominal fees will be charged through to the customers for this.
Okay,
Praveena,
understood.
can I just jump in there for a quick comment?
Yes, Sanjeev ji, I'm actually going to pass on to you for closure. So we'll take your comment. You have a bird's eye view of everything that's happening in the industry. So if you can give us your perspective on what you think, are the barriers in the industry, and along with your comments, also give some direction on what you think the ecosystem players, the industry should be doing, and then we'll close with your comments.
Sure. No, thank you for that. I was just going to say that as I was listening to Deepak ji and Rajeev ji earlier, recently we had a couple of fintechs make a presentation to DFS and Niti Aayog, and the entire idea was around lending based on various cash transfers. So there was one fintech which was talking about targeting the kind of Bharat that we are giving benefits transfers to, and therefore offering tailor-made products which could be targeted at some of these, low-ticket items, but still that would make use of this data and then offer products to them, even loans, small loans. And that could be a very powerful access to credit kind of paradigm that we could offer to these people. The other fintech that came to us was, of course, talking about people's spending patterns. And if you analyze the kind of spend that people have, for example, you go to a petrol pump, and how many times a month you've gone there, what is the amount you've spent. If that kind of information could be collated and analyzed, and then people could be targeted with different kind of products. So I thought some of these fintechs and the ideas that they were presenting to us were very exciting. But to go back to the question that you posed in terms of some of the bottlenecks, again, I think one of the panelists was talking about, I think it was Deepak ji who was talking about security concerns. I think there are two parts to the whole customer experience. The first part is if we are to enable the customer to have a much richer experience, then we have to increase our infrastructure capacity. If you recall, Praveena, NPCI and we were discussing all through April as to the failed transactions. And then we were successfully able to reduce the number of failed transactions. So I think the banks and NPCI will have to step up the capacity as far as infrastructure for handling the increased volume and also the transaction value, that is the increased volume of transactions. But also, I think there is a very important point around financial literacy. Some of these customers that we are trying to target, especially in Bharat, um, even if they have access, may not be culturally, they may not be familiar with the kind of technologies that you offer and the kind of services they can avail. And even if we manage to publicize that, then there are concerns around financial literacy, what product to choose, how to do this, how to do that. We are trying to currently also avail some fintech services to try and integrate products. For instance, we are trying to say how the Sukanya Samriddhi scheme could be linked together with some compulsory or some monthly saving schemes, or a recurring fixed deposit could be tied up with the kind of direct benefits transfers that we are making. We are also taking auto consent for people who are receiving some of these cash transfers to enroll onto the Prime Minister's Jan Suraksha schemes, the micro insurance schemes that we have. So I think in terms of bottleneck, we have a long way to go, but we are already trying to solve the issues around infrastructure. Very importantly, the payment acceptance infrastructure will have to be invested in. And that is where there are current issues, if I can use the word irritants, like, the issue of MDR charges, etc., which we have to work around from the policy perspective. We are very much conscious of that. But that is my take on some of the bottleneck issues that we face going forward.
Thank you. That's a great closure. Thank you, everybody. Sanjeev ji, Deepak, Rajeev, Ajay. So we'll close the panel with this. Looking forward to many more years of digital empowerment for Bharat, for Digital India, and I'm sure we'll see many accolades to work on this together. Thank you so much.